Thibaut, welcome to Your Turn podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cedric. Pretty excited to go and share some insights about prospecting.
Exactly. And maybe before we talk, why don't you introduce yourself? Why Thibaut is the right person to talk about prospecting and more specifically prospecting on LinkedIn?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name is Thibaut Souyris. I'm French and Swiss, and I live, right now in south of France. And I basically train and coach tech sales people to start more conversations and book meetings. And on your question on why should people, listen to me on that, I mean, they should just check my content. If they like it and it's valuable for them, they should try it. If they think it's crap, it's fine. It work for some people, it doesn't work for others who don't have, like, let's say, customers or prospects on LinkedIn. But mostly is I prospect, almost every day. I have a system that I've created for myself to be able to get business. And I've been in sales since I'm around 15 years old. So, going from nothing to closing some deals is really what I love doing. So I do
Mhm.
that every day and I document what I'm doing. So it's not like I have an old technique that used to work. It's more I'm trying new stuff, new experimentation all the time, and just sharing what are the findings.
Yeah, yeah. And this is what we'll cover, all of this. And the goal is now to come with some actionable insights.
Uh-huh.
And maybe let's start with the first thing that you said, that you prospect almost every day.
Yeah.
So I think an important thing in prospecting is exactly building up that consistency. So what were your learnings in exactly building up that consistency?
So what I found is it's actually pretty hard at the beginning to go and wrap your head around the job of prospecting. Should you be an SDR or an AE? And often, it's just kind of a bit of overwhelming. It depends on the organization where you are. But what you find is that, for example, you have a specific goal. And I remember when I had my first sales job, I knew I had a specific goal of, I think was like 600,000 euro of closing the first year. And I really had no clue on how I would go there. So it can be the same when you're prospecting. You have to generate, let's say, 12 opportunities every month. And then you're like, how am I going to do that when no one's replying to my emails? And so what you understand is that if you can build, you have a goal and you work backwards to be able to say, okay, if I want to book 12 meetings, I need to, I don't know, contact 1,000 people per month. Then you can actually divide that by the number of days you're going to work. And just knowing that working this amount of doing this specific activity every day will actually go and lead you to success. And so that's what I found is really challenging is being able to understand this. Then you have an idea, I need to contact 50 people every day. Then it's building the habit of doing it. And that's the most challenging. I'm
Yeah.
personally like really naturally lazy. So, I have built some habits in the morning where I prospect. So I do some sport before and I prospect. Two things I hate doing, but I know they're really healthy for both my health and my pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that the number when you say, okay, I need to reach 1,000 people, it might be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So dividing it into those small daily habits and building them are part one of the success. And the second thing is that, well, in the end, 1,000 people, to give the number 1,000
Yeah.
is just a dumb metric. Because I think, and what you really do well is, you look how to optimize the messaging. Because if you have 1,000 contacts and you have one deal out of it, it's a very low conversion.
Yeah.
But how do you go about in improving the response rate, starting up conversations? So how do you test it?
So at the beginning, like you have the quantity, which is always super important to be able to have data. So for me, the first thing is make sure you have the activity, the cruising altitude, I call that. So
Hmm.
if you have 50 people every day, make sure you do it every day, for a few weeks. And then you'll be able to see that if your messaging is poor, you're going to get some replies, but not that many. So once you're in there, especially around LinkedIn, what you want to do is to be able to optimize for acceptance of your connection requests. So on LinkedIn, the great thing is that once you're connected with someone, your first degree connection, you can use voice notes on LinkedIn, you can use videos, GIF, you can do plenty of different things that you can't do if you're not connected. So what you want to do is first make sure you optimize for your connection request. There's different kind of school of thoughts here. You can for me is the law of connection request is if you don't have something extremely relevant to mention, don't write anything. So you're going to be able to have more connection, more acceptance by people actually not seeing a note. Because often, when you are receiving a connection request, it's on your mobile phone. The app is done in a way where there's like a cross and a check mark. And if there's like the note and you start saying, "Hello, Thibaut, I hope this finds you well, blah, blah, blah." You're like, okay, someone's just trying to sell me something. You're going to click on no. But if you go and the profile is optimized, meaning you know what they're doing, more or less, they're not like threatening or, it's just like, looks like just someone you can accept. You're going to click on accept, and then you're going to get more replies. So it's really about understanding what's the process of people starting a conversation with you, and often it starts by them accepting a connection request when you're on LinkedIn.
And do you see some evolution that some connection requests that worked well in the past that don't work well at all anymore?
Not so much. I found that it's just really like the way I see it is really rooted in human psychology, where um, there's maybe some A/B testing from LinkedIn. I don't really know exactly about how they run that, but what I found is that it stays more or less the same. Where if you had a shitty message, you're gonna have really low reply rates, and you can see now people are trained to see automation. People are trained to see when people are trying to sell them more leads and whatever. And so it's really it for me it's always been like that, where you see people when they see your profile looks like fine, and they just don't think there's any reason to deny the connection request, they're gonna accept. But if you put like a text and it's just really bad, they are not gonna accept.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And before we go deeper into LinkedIn, and because it is mainly through LinkedIn that you prospect, why not other means? Why not mail? Why not phone? Why do you focus on LinkedIn?
So I don't really, I do a bit of email sometimes, but mostly LinkedIn is because for me personally, I have a big audience over there, like over 31,000 people. I share a lot of content, and it's just natural to have conversations on LinkedIn. And for me, I found it fits better my personality style, where I just really like being direct, chatting without, like writing an email or whatever. Because email, if you think about it, is just like it's a virtual copy of a letter. So we kind of put the letter, put them in emails, and we kind of kept this kind of way or structure of using emails. And I don't really like to communicate like that. So I just prefer chatting, and it's just like way faster. So for me, it's why I'm using LinkedIn. But whenever you're prospecting in a specific account, often it's good to have more than that. So LinkedIn, email, phone, maybe direct, using stuff like Sendoso or Rich Desk. But for me, it's really just like I have a big addressable market, so I just focus on LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And do you have markets like B2C, B2B, or specific verticals that say, okay, LinkedIn works or LinkedIn doesn't work at all?
So I think it's changing. This one is evolving really fast, where more and more people are hanging out on LinkedIn, especially in Europe, where let's say 5 years ago Germany was not super present, but now you have a lot of people on that. It's more related to the industries, for example. So um, like you have some industries like HR, recruiting, like SaaS, tech, whatever. Everyone's on LinkedIn, and you have some where people are just they are not really on LinkedIn, but they're interested in going. So my father, for example, he has a company. They do some robots for packaging, so packaging different kind of food, and he's really interested in LinkedIn. He's on LinkedIn, but he doesn't really know how to get there or how to follow people or whatever. So I would say it's important to see first if there's some of your prospects on LinkedIn, and then you can get an idea. And if you don't see that many people, that means people are not there, but that also means there's an opportunity to create some content to attract some of these people. So I found that it varies on the industries, but often you have some people who are on LinkedIn, and the idea is to go and you know find where they hang out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And finding where they hang out for you is very important. And maybe you can go a bit deeper into this.
Yeah, so for me, finding where they hang out is just, if you think about, um, so it's just like a virtual representation of the world. And so if you think about where people hang out, often it was historically at the golf course, or it was just like different, like let's say networking clubs or whatever, stuff like that. And now things are a bit different. So there's still people hanging out at the golf course, but you have to think, what's the golf course online? And often it can be communities. You have Pavilion, for example, who's a community for I don't know, for VP of sales, or it changed a lot, but initially it was called Revenue Collective, and that was like a lot of VPs of sales over there. And so it's really finding these places, and often it can be Slack groups, can be private communities, can be public communities, people just like following influencers. And this one's really interesting. There's a lot of creators on LinkedIn or thought leaders, and these people have an audience. And what you can do is, if this audience is composed of people you want to sell to, you follow these people, and then you're able to see, okay, based on the like, let's say of Justin Welch, for example, he has thousands of people liking every one of his posts. And it's like mostly solopreneurs, people in business trying to do, like their own stuff. And if you're selling to these people, that's where you're going to find them.
Mhm.
So for me, it's just finding the thought leaders in specific spaces, following them. And this is where you'll find a lot of other people.
Yeah. And this, to play the devil's advocate, and I do know your system, so but it all sounds a lot of work. So how do you divide between finding them, hanging out to these places, maybe creating content, doing the actual prospecting? What is your mechanism?
So the thing is, it's a lot of work to kind of wrap your head around that. But then you have to build a system. So for me, is like what I do when I prospect. First thing I do is I have a prospecting block of 30 minutes to 1 hour. I start by doing my follow-ups. So I have a prospecting tracker, which is a Notion dashboard I have where I just like track the LinkedIn profile and the status of where people are in my sequence. I go and I say, okay, so every 2 days I do like a follow up of people who are in sequence, and so I know I have a list of maybe 10 to 15 people I need to check if they replied, if they follow up, or if the sequence kind of stopped, run out. So I go, I will check that. And then once my follow-ups are done, I'm going to go to the next step, which is finding 5 prospects. So for me, I've defined that I need to contact 5 new prospects or add them to my sequence every day to be able to reach my target. So I go, I look for these people either in my profile views or on the posts I've done, either in people who liked the post or commented, or on other people's posts. So
Mhm.
whenever I don't have enough of these people, I go to someone else's post and I see, okay, who liked this thing? And whenever you don't have, for people who listen, if they don't have like a lot of followers on LinkedIn, or if they just don't post, that's fine. Just go to this thing, identify someone who's speaking to your ideal customer profile, look at the posts they're doing, and whenever there's a post about a problem or something related to what you're selling, you can add these people when they fit to your ICP, and then contact them. So for me, it's kind of a lot of work to create the system, but once it's done, you just know every day, follow up, finding 5 new people, contacting them, then you're done. You don't need to create content, you don't need to do anything, you just need to find the people who are already creating content, and look for like their audience.
And when you work with the companies, if you look at, you have and SDRs, maybe you have full cycle AEs. How do you create one consistent system for them? Because obviously SDRs have much more time to build it, and they probably all would want to work then on LinkedIn. Do you make a distinction between there, or how do you work with them?
So the thing is, what you see is whenever you train a team, let's say of 10 people, there's going to be, I don't know, 1 or 2 people who really love it. They're just super engaged. 1 or 2 people who really don't care. And then the rest who you just have to kind of like go and find there. So for me, the approach I find is that whenever you're hiring SDRs to go and book meetings, if you go and you create a system that they have to follow where they send this specific email, which is always the same email, always the same stuff, and they just do stuff that basically don't require their brain or creativity, then you'd be better off without them. You'd be better off investing, let's say, a tenth of this into a system that is fully automated, that sends email, whatever things. There's plenty of things you can do, and that would be enough. But what we know is it doesn't work. So for me, the system is really, I train people to use their brains so they can understand a bit better human psychology, how people typically react, how you catch their attention. And then you show them these things, and you give them the tools to create experiments. So it's not, hey, everyone's going to do the same. It's more, you have a specific territory, or you have a, specific focus. Here are tools for you to try. Here are plays, things you can try. Some will work, some will not. But the job of hiring 10 people is to get 10 creative brains who also have like a good habit and a good kind of like input level and try different things. And so whenever I train teams, there's always people who are driving the team because they come up with great ideas and then they kind of like create a playbook out of it. And so that's what I see is that I'm not going in to say, okay, this is the system, you have to follow it blindly. It's more this kind of is a thought process. You follow that, you try different experiments, and some will work, some will not. And the thing is, prospecting, about it is that something that works now will not work in 3 months. So it's just about constantly experimenting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I like that on the one hand you have a system. Secondly, you talk about testing. So it's not because you have this system in place that everything is set in stone. You
Yeah.
keep on testing, you keep on trying stuff. And then when people or companies start implementing the system, how long does it take from the time it's okay? Yes, we start to having a workable system.
So having early results is really fast. So in a few weeks, whenever you're following that, it works well. Having a system where you build a playbook can take a few months. I did it with a company called AIHR. So we started, they got trained, they did the initial training, and then we did some experimentation with sprints where we were saying, okay, we're gonna do 2 week sprints where we try something. So
Mhm.
we started and say, okay, now we want to kind of increase our activity level so we can get like a good baseline for data. So we got the activity level. It's going well, but the reply rates are pretty low. So then we check, okay, how are the connection requests? Pretty low. So let's focus on this for the next sprint.
Yeah,
Then it goes from, I don't know, 30% acceptance to 60%. We're good. Now let's keep doing this. That's like LinkedIn connection request playbook. We know we have to do this. And then we work on how to get more replies. So focus on the messaging, maybe the ICP. And so it really depends on the teams. But what you'll see is having good ideas of how it works. It's getting like here and there some meetings takes just like a few days. Having the system and really scaling it can go, like up to 3 months typically.
yeah, okay, sounds good. And it's fast in the end. I have one more thing, and then I want to shift to something new that you're working on. So the last thing, you still have people that are not active on LinkedIn. Let me say that maybe just an assumption, right? Maybe the C levels of of bigger companies they're not there, and it might be part of an ICP that your clients have identified.
Mhm.
What would you suggest to them, or how do you approach this then?
So when the C level is not on LinkedIn or when they are not active on LinkedIn?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so what you do in that case is if you have, let's say, a specific type of account you want to go after and you have a list of 30 accounts and these are the only accounts you will work with,
Hmm.
you have to, you can't just go and say, okay, I'm just going to work on LinkedIn because it's not going to work. So you have to go and find where they hang out. So can be phone, can be email, can be LinkedIn, can be Twitter, can be plenty of things. So first thing to do is to make sure you find out where these people are typically located. And
Yeah,
sometimes in some cases, you won't be able to access to them in any other way than by meeting them at events or whatever. So the first thing is to understand that LinkedIn as a tool can work when when you're selling to salespeople, when you're selling to tech people in tech, it works really well. But if people are not hanging out on LinkedIn, you should you should multi-thread typically. And so that's really understanding this and saying, okay, I want this to work. I want to kind of work with LinkedIn, but if people are not there, it's useless. You're just wasting your time. So it's really about making sure that you are using it as a viable channel. And when people approach me and they want to be trained, I always check that it's the right type of account.
yeah,
Because if they have no one on LinkedIn, I can show them everything, but it's not gonna work because their ICP aren't there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, and now let's shift into something that you absolutely have embraced the last couple of weeks and months is ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
maybe what impact did ChatGPT made for your business when you discovered it?
So for me, I mean, I'm not a guy who's typically, hey, there's a new crypto stuff, let's do some crypto, whatever. I
Yeah.
received an email who guy was saying, hey, I have a lead generation software that is based on crypto and AI. And I was like, what is he talking about? So basically, the thing is, I saw some use case and I was like, okay, that looks really interesting. So what I'm going to do is instead of saying, hey, here's repost stuff about AI, I say, okay, I'm going to try ChatGPT specifically for prospecting. And so what I found is that if you say, write me an email to sell an SDR training service, the email will be horrible. You know, if you just say, write me a joke or whatever, fine, it's going to write you a joke. But basically, if you use it as an assistant, a virtual assistant, you know, it's going to work really well. So it's
Yeah.
really about, you know, a few concepts are very simple, but you have to train the AI. So basically, you're using opening ChatGPT and you're saying, here's like an example of a really great email. So I received this email. There's a subject line, there's the email, and then what you're going to do is show the example and then explain why it's good. So, okay, here's the example. This is a great subject line because it's short, 3 words, whatever.
Mhm.
Now here's like the framework. There's like 4 elements. Each element is this, and you have the example. Now, based on these other problems I have, build some, you know, give me some examples. And so what you find is that when you train the AI through prompts, you have some great results. You save a lot of time, and you're able to integrate that into your system. And so for me, that's really, you know, how it impacted for my prospecting is that I'm able to brainstorm prospect problems a lot more. I'm able to find clear symptoms of these, get some ideas, and just use it as an assistant. And so that's really for the part of prospecting. For the part of running my business, I use it for productivity. It's just like you know, it saves me so much time to create content. So I'll create a podcast, extract the transcript, turn that into a show note for the podcast, then turn that into a newsletter. And so it's just, you know, it's just like having a team of different kind of skilled people working for you. And so as a solopreneur, it's just really, really useful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And let's break down the first thing. I mean, and training an AI. I think
Yeah.
for many people that might already sound complex.
Yeah.
Um, it is exactly not just entering a general prompt. How do you train it? I mean, is it each time a different command? Do you need to stay within the same subject? How does it work?
So the very good thing about it is just it's super versatile on the way you can use it. So first concept is, you know, you at first you're going to try prompts and then the results can be very random, very bad. If you say, hey, you know, find me some data related, you know, if you just ask it something that like you would ask Google, the results will be bad. So first thing to understand is that you have to engineer your prompt. So a good kind of concept would be to be, you know, to say act like a specific job title. So act like an SDR expert, you know everything about cold emails, about LinkedIn prospecting and everything, and coach me on how I typically, you know, build a LinkedIn sequence. And then it can give you like some ideas. And then it's about using your judgment. You know, is it good enough? Is it not precise enough? If it's good enough, if it's not precise, you can say, okay, you know, remove all the buzzwords and jargon and be more specific. So you just have to chat with it, you know. And as you go and chat with it, it's kind of like refining, going in the direction you want. And so it's really about using that. And at some point, you understand a bit more how to interact with it. And then, you know, you can write huge prompts that are really like canned prompts with like really details and everything. But for me, what I found works well is to just say, okay, I found this great stuff. I want to do more of it. Give me an idea of how I can help. I'll give you another example. I'm doing a lead magnet, with, a PDF basically. And so I wanted to find colors that are matching really well, where basically I want it to be beautiful on the screen, but I want it to be printable, you know?
Yeah.
Because if you do something dark and you print it, it's going to really be bad because it's going to use a lot of ink. So I asked it, you know, what would be some good colors that would work well. And then it showed me, you know, the color code and everything. And so, you know, that's really using it this way where you have an idea, you start asking it like you want to ask an expert or someone, and then you often get some really good replies.
Yeah. And so, do you build then your sequences on LinkedIn or your mini sequences on LinkedIn um, through those mini prompts plus the content, or what do you do?
No, mostly the what I do is like the way I use it is there's a view use case, but the first one is prospect research. So whenever I have a prospect I want to go to, I will export the LinkedIn profile of this person on PDF.
Mhm.
There's a button called Save to PDF. So I export this LinkedIn profile. I copy the whole content of it without thinking about formatting, and then I say, okay, here's the LinkedIn profile of someone. I want to actually contact this person and get their attention. And so here are 3 problems that typically solve. Now create some links and find me, you know, mention something that could really help them. And so basically it kind of scraps all the data and then it tells you, okay, you can mention this, you can mention that. And so that's really helpful for me. So the sequence, Like the structure of the sequence is more something I create. I don't really need AI for that. So I just say, okay, I'm going to use a LinkedIn touch point here, a message, an email, whatever. And then, for the content of it, I will say, okay, so here are 9 symptoms of problems my prospects are typically having. I'm going to do a 9 touch point sequence based on each of these symptoms. And so what I'm going to say is like, there's a specific symptom like high turnover rate when you're hiring SDRs. And then I'm going to be based on that, I'm going to create like a framework and say, okay, so here's a good email framework where I say, how do you avoid high turnover rate when you're hiring SDRs? Because I have a specific resource I can share on disqualifying bad SDRs early. If you're interested, let me know and I'll send it over. I train ChatGPT on that, and then it creates like variations for each symptoms. And then I know already the content I can put in each of my touch points. So here, instead of creating each touch point from scratch, I follow a template and I kind of feed it to a ChatGPT and it comes back with some really good ideas of message based on the templates I have.
Okay, okay, sounds good. Um, Maybe one last suggestion or advice to the audience. On the one hand, you have your manual outreach system, and I really like you said, okay, 5. It's not 50. It's you can really
Yeah.
personalize it, spend time on it. On the other hand, you have other organizations that go into the mass distribution. What is your take on personalizing and individual and focused versus going wide and in volume for maybe larger companies?
So I mean, it depends what you're doing. If you're doing outbound prospecting or email marketing, for example. So often people are a bit confused in both. They say, hey, I'm gonna go and blast some email to everyone. And so for me, it's just like you don't really understand how to go to market when you're doing this. If you hire 10 SDRs and each SDR has to do 2,000 emails, per week, just like maybe you should build a mailing list instead. And, it's going to cost a lot less money and be a lot more efficient. So for me, it's more like you have to kind of understand a bit the personalization. There's always something for me. Personalization is great, but most cases for me, even if you perform like crazy, like more than half of people will not even reply to your sequence. So for me, it's really understanding that you have frameworks that you can use. You have personalization elements. You have to look for specific things on LinkedIn profile. Look for triggers, we call them, and basically once you're trained on how to find these things, how to do it quickly, then it's just about mentioning it quickly and doing an arbitrage between, okay, I want to really write a really full detailed email, then whatever, and or sending something that is a bit more generic. And so one thing that is really a tip I can give to everyone is that it's not because an account is a shiny account or really one you really want to go after that you should go and spend too much time on it. So for me, it's more um, you try to maximize the replies and the conversation you start. And once you're there, you can start getting excited about the account. It's not, oh, I need to go after Coca-Cola. It's going to be a great opportunity, whatever. There's a high chance that ain't no one at Coca-Cola will be interested in your stuff. And maybe that, that's going to be the case, but maybe later that's going to change. So for me, it's more, don't kind of be obsessed by an account, be obsessed by a specific number of people to contact every day. And that should be your obsession. Just work on this, and then you're going to get a lot more replies.
Yeah, thank you. So we spoke about consistency. We spoke about creating the content, creating the sequence. We spoke about the ChatGPT. Any other things that people should definitely take into account when they build their sequence and start to prospect on LinkedIn?
So I would say the one thing that is really important is to understand copy and how to communicate through writing to people. So because that's what you're doing when you're sending emails, you're doing asynchronous communication. So if you can like um, try to understand what's a good copy, what it means, that's really something helpful. So what are some kind of not maybe words, but what are the structures of sentences that you can use, structures of writing that you can use to get people excited? And there's a few things, but keep stuff short. Work on people's curiosity. So I call that the Netflix effect, where basically you're going to use cliffhangers to kind of like, let's say you have a series, you're going to build tension, and right before the tension resolves, you cut the episode, so people will want to know what's after that. It's the same thing in when you're writing emails. You're saying, hey, do you have this specific problem? Because if you do, I may have a solution, but if you want to know about the solution, you just have to reply. And so that's really understanding how people are pretty much all the same. We're super curious. We are wired for rewards and everything. So it's understanding human psychology and how it
Hmm.
translates into writing through an art called or a craft called copywriting.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Thibaut. Where can people reach you when they want to know more?
Just go on LinkedIn. So Thibaut Souyris. Maybe you could put like the
I'll
link to
put
my
it in
LinkedIn
the
profile in the
comments
show
here.
notes. I have a newsletter called Tactical Selling, where every Thursday I give like tactical, basically detailed insights about a specific tactic or something I tried. So they can go and check it out. And I also have my AI outreach system, which is, yeah, as it says, an outreach system based on AI that is available. So if they go on my LinkedIn profile, they'll find everything there.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Thibaut, and best of luck with LinkedIn.
Yeah. Thank you, Cedric, for having me. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, man.